thank you everyone for tuning in and continuing to tune in. And Doug, thank you so much for being my guest tonight. It's great to have you.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to you, Vita. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Um, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Doug Levandowski. I am a English high school English teacher, peer group advisor, and game designer. The first two kind of go together. The last one kind of is off on its own most of the time. Um, but uh, but yeah, I've designed games like Kids on Bikes, Kids on Brooms, Home, um, and things like that. Uh, and I like getting people to tell great stories with each other.
Yeah, and experientially, you do a wonderful job with that. I've always enjoyed playing your games.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Um, And tonight we usually have Philip. I usually have Philip in the chat, but he has had a family emergency, so he will not be joining us tonight. Um, so if you're watching the replay, that's why you're not seeing Philip's comments.
Hmm.
um, Doug and I, oh gosh, the conversation we were having really engaged my brain
Yeah,
so much.
yeah.
that I just had to look at the run of show and reorient.
Sure.
So I'm gonna breathe us into the space now.
Mhm.
Um, so I invite you and anyone who's watching to just go ahead and settle in, close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you, and tune into your breath, simply following it as it moves in and out. Notice anything in your body that wants to offer itself. Send it love, and then return your attention to following your breath. Just noticing and breathing. Gently take one last breath, and as you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the space. I just love how one of the reasons that I include the opening and closing breaths is I love how centered makes me feel.
Mhm.
And I just love it as a practice. When the thing I love most about breathing practices is that our breath is always with us.
Mhm.
So it's always a tool there for us. Tonight, Doug and I will be chatting about some questions we've agreed to discuss. And please feel free to share questions and comments in the live or later on the video. I'm always going to respond to you. And sometimes you inspire new videos or segments. And then Doug's going to share a practice with us that he uses. Uh, so, our first question tonight is, how do you achieve work-life balance?
That's a great question. I agreed to talk about a question I don't have an answer to.
Yeah. I want to just preface with, like, for everyone, that I think none of these questions can be answered
Right,
conclusively in like a short period of time or maybe ever, right?
right. Yeah, and anybody who tells you they have the answer is lying or delusional or both. I think.
Or it
But
can, but people can share about like what works for
what
them.
works for them
That's
exactly,
right.
right? But I think, and this is something we'll talk about with the later questions too, any kind of like one size fits all is
Hmm.
really one size fits none, right?
That's
Like,
right.
I forget where I heard that, but I love it, right?
I love that too. Yeah.
And I did not come up with it. I will not plagiarize that, although I can't cite it. So anyway, um, so I growing up as like the waspiest of wasps, I tick all the boxes there, right? Um, the whole Puritan work ethic thing, right, was something that has always been with me. And, high school, college, I started growing out of it a little bit, but when I got my job, my first year of teaching, there was no work life. There was work and there were bad first dates
Mm,
that didn't go anywhere, right?
mm,
There were like 8 of those that first year. And that was sort of, I think, like emblematic of my whole focus was work, work, work. I would go to school sick, because I can't miss it. Um, and as I got older, I realized a couple things. One, when it comes to being sick, this was, I think, one of the first things that I work-life balanced out. When it comes to being sick, I'm sick longer and I'm getting other people sick. So this sort of like, it was kind of an attitude check for me of like, I'm being selfish by going in some ways, right?
yeah.
But I'm also not being kind to myself. It's this miraculous, like, double-edged sword that I'm managing to cut both sides with.
Right.
Um, and so I did get better about that, but I still, one of the things that helped me a lot is I sort of got to a point where I realized that with teaching, as with I think a lot of jobs, where care for others is part of your job.
Hmm.
Um, no matter how great you get at it, from very good to amazing to great, there's always going to be a way to improve. And so if you're saying, well, it's best, I teach English, right? So it's best for kids to get papers back as quickly as possible because the research shows that the time between writing it and receiving feedback matters more than the amount of feedback on the paper, matters more than most other factors.
Sure, that makes sense to me.
And so I could say, okay, well, it's my obligation to comment on papers that night.
Hmm.
If I collect 60 papers,
That's a
well,
long night.
yeah, well, you know what, bud? That's a lot. Take 2 days, right? Um, eh, or I could always prep more, or I could always give more, shift the needle along that amount of energy that I have more and more and more and more towards work and say, well, the life stuff will work itself out.
Hmm.
And when I was dating my wife, we were about 45 minutes apart. Weeknights, that was easily doable, right? But when we moved in together, when I mean, that was one of the big shifts, right? That if I spend time trying to be a better educator, I spend time being a worse partner, right?
Right.
Um, and so I'm still not great at it and I'm getting better at it, but since I'm almost never my own priority,
Hmm.
um, the act of acknowledging that it's harmful for her if I'm, just coming up to bed at 10:30 and turning out the light and saying good night, maybe it takes a week to get the papers back, and so be it, right? But that led me to embrace this sort of, I call it like teacher doublethink,
Hmm.
where on the one hand, I have to say, I have to do everything I can for my students' benefit and to to help them grow into the people they become and to, never be okay with kids not just not failing, but not getting the best educational experience they can.
Yeah.
And I also have to be completely okay with some kids failing and probably every kid not getting the absolute best possible educational experience that I could have a part in, right? because it it requires that I remain functional, right?
Right.
Um, in order for it to work. And yeah, so really embracing that, like, hey, if I had infinite energy, here's what I would do. But I can't do that because I don't, because I get to watch an episode of Ted Lasso a night, right?
Right.
I I get to play Scooby-Doo Betrayal with my family when on a Sunday instead of cranking out those three more papers to return them on Monday. They'll get them on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that was big. And then when my daughter was born, that was a big shift as well because what I'm one, the experience that she has with me as a parent, if I'm saying, no, sweetie, dad has to do this for other people's children. Um, it, to me, that's like a non-starter. Again, it's that sort of like I'm doing this so that I can be better for her. If it were just me, I'd, be the ground down end of a pencil nub and that would be all right. But it's for her. And so not only do I not want her to feel like I think that's more important than her because I don't, um, I also want to set a good example for her of, whatever she does. I want her, I often tell her, I want you to be better at everything than I am. And being good about work-life balance and being kind to herself and saying, this is the amount of energy I have to give to this. And my what I've done is good enough. Maybe it's even great, but it could be better, but here's where we're at.
I love that honestly because I feel like gosh, I heard so many important things. Like one, just identifying inroads. I think of them as inroads, right? Like our
Mm,
opportunities to have a key that supports us in a shift that we want to make, right? Like and and knowing that that's different for all of us.
hmm
And then just thinking about like I think the biggest gift that I can give to any of my clients or students or people that I interact with in life
hmm
is to put on my own oxygen mask
hmm
and take care of myself so that I can show up with an open heart and be really present
hmm
to whatever comes my way. I like
Yeah,
I love that. I think that I mean that sounds like great work-life balance to me, Doug.
it's getting there. It's getting there. Yeah.
Right? But that's that like everything is a practice,
hmm
you know? I know for me, like I just picked up in the past year, my schedule has been changing kind of continuously.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I was I spent last year focusing on trying to establish my business here
Mhm.
and I had a decent amount of clients, but not quite where I needed to be financially. And so I went back to working for someone else as a
hmm
massage therapist as well as keeping my own clients separately. And all of the schedule changing that means, right?
hmm
So working by appointments means that even that when I started to be full time at the studio that I'm working at, I still wasn't necessarily there all day
Right.
because
Right.
because I was building a clientele.
Sure.
Um, and figuring out the routine of that meant that I had like I know that I have to accommodate myself when I'm going through those changes. It's something I've learned about me is I love to cook and I love when I'm in a routine, I know that I can prep food and I can bring that with me.
hmm
As a routine is establishing, though, I have to give myself accommodations like getting more takeout or foods that I know I can just stick in the oven,
Right. Right.
right? And and that's so that I can have the time to just sit still and decompress and walk around and look at the trees or do a meditation because those are
Mhm.
things that, or dig my nose into a book, whatever
Right.
it is. Um,
Well,
yeah.
and you talking about cooking made me think about the role that my hobby of game design plays in that, right?
Mhm.
I so this is my 21st year teaching, and 21, 20 years ago, I figured like, I mean, yeah, I'll probably never retire, right? Like,
Sure.
uh, what would I do, right?
Right.
Um, and as game design picked up as a hobby, that I think being creative is self-care as well, right? Like letting the parts of my brain that get exercised differently as a teacher play with the design space is a way to refresh, recharge. Even if there's, for me, not a ton of crossover between the two,
Yes. Yeah.
um, it gives me something. I think part of work-life balance is making sure that you have something else to look forward to outside, right?
Mhm.
Like I said, if I were single and had no didn't have any children, would do a lot more work because that's what would bring value to my life, not in like an economic financial sense, but like, we crave doing something that is valuable, right?
Like accomplishment wise, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, something that is worth doing, right?
I would contend that sitting around is worth doing, but
Yeah, uh, something that I'm I'm much too waspy to be there yet. But but I you are correct and I am not, and I know that, but I don't feel that for myself yet. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Um, but having that thing that is other than work that can captivate me and can bring in a, a fulfilled kind of enjoyment, right? Cognitive engagement and emotional engagement and meaning, um, is also really helpful.
Yeah. Well, and there are, I think there are seven main forms of rest and restoration. Creativity is absolutely one of them,
Mm,
right? Just like knowing, I think of everything as a practice, and I
mm,
actually usually use bikes as a metaphor for it
mhm,
because when we first start to ride a bike, we fall down.
mhm.
Everybody falls, right?
Yeah.
And if we keep riding bikes, maybe we get really good, but if we try to get fancy and we're, doing tricks or riding slalom or whatever we're doing, the fancier we get, the more likely it is we're going to keep falling.
Hmm.
And I think every piece of life is like that. So resting, finding the things that restore us is its own
Mm.
practice.
That's
And
yes, that's a
knowing,
great simile. Yeah.
yeah, and knowing that knowing like I being able, I think I know for me, the more successful I am at identifying which piece of rest I'm craving at a specific time,
Hmm.
the more filled I feel.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because if I just sit around in a time when I really want to be creative, then I
Right.
don't really feel restored afterwards. I just feel
Right.
fidgety.
Right. And I'm so extroverted that I almost never need me time, right?
Mm.
Like
Mhm.
more than 99% of the time, I would rather be doing something with someone.
Sure.
Um, just because of who I am. And it's,
Well, and it's for extroverts, that's part of how your cup gets filled.
right.
Is like the joy, the shared camaraderie of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm definitely an extroverted introvert. I enjoy exchanges and I need time to process and integrate and And if I don't get that time, then what happens for me is my brain will tick on
Mm.
like what has transpired because it's trying to go down that path, and it makes me fidgety because
Yeah.
I'm like not in the moment that I'm in, which I want to be present with people and rocks and trees, and sometimes I just need to be by myself, which
Yeah.
it's all fine, I think. Um, yeah. So that's a little bit, right, about how we think
Mhm.
about how and what's worked for each of us and achieving work-life balance and moving toward it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so are you ready to move on to our next question?
I think I am. Yeah.
Okay. So our next question is, what can we do to protect the books we love?
Uh, I think we can read them and we can recommend them and we can use our public libraries.
100%. Yeah.
I My wife is a librarian, so in some ways I am a paid shill here, but um, I bought a lot of books um, uh, before she and I got together and early in our relationship. And in the past few years, as we're as you acquire just so much stuff,
Hmm.
right? I have books that I bought that I will uh, never read again or have never read and will probably never read, right? Um, so, her thing is like, why not? Like, it if you think you're gonna love the book, it's one of your favorite authors, it's the third in a trilogy, whatever, fine, buy it. But if you want to check something out, check it out of the library. And then if you love it and you say, I want to read that once a year, go buy it.
Yeah.
Then you've given the library uh, business, right? Not exactly, but you've helped their numbers.
Yeah.
You've shown them books that people want to check out.
Hmm.
And if you buy a copy afterwards, it's the both benefits. On the other hand, if you don't, then fine. You read a book that isn't one that you're gonna read and quote and want to have on you know, your single shelf of books that you would try to save from a fire if you could, right?
Right.
Um, so I think we can protect the books we love by reading books, by talking about them, by uh, making it known what power they've had over us, what they've done to transform us.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. And I love going to the library and sharing books.
Hmm.
I also, right, I've worked at an independent bookstore,
Hmm.
and so the first thing that comes to mind for me, uh, or that came to mind for me thinking about this question before was go to your local independent bookstore
Yes.
and talk to the booksellers and ask how you can volunteer.
Hmm.
How, like, because guaranteed they are involved in protecting books.
Hmm.
And then really the same is true at a library, right? Go and
Yeah.
ask your librarian,
Yeah.
how can you help serve? How can
Hmm.
you, and of course reading the books is absolutely, as you said,
Yeah.
like top of the list, and sharing them.
Hmm.
Like I love uh I just read a really wonderful book. Gosh, the name of it is escaping me right now. But
I I
I
read a wonderful one too, and
I shared it on Facebook, and now I'm looking for a picture of it. Oh, Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but um, their name wrong, but it was such a good book. It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was all of the things of like a story of becoming and from several different perspectives of several different people. And again, right, like this series is actualizing your authentic self. So anything that where
Yeah.
people are actually are doing that is definitely for me.
I recently read Small Things Like These
Mm,
by I pulled it up. Who was by Claire Keegan, um, which is a tiny, tiny little book that's uh, so good. Fiction, and I think probably the less you know going in, the more powerful it is, unless there are any content warnings people need. But um, it's it's remarkable. It was like a 1 day read for me because
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that's the power of words, right? They support us in cultivating thoughts or maybe changing our minds about something or
Mhm.
expanding the way that we can perceive something or think about something. And so just sharing those ideas is incredible.
Yeah.
Um, and being part of a book club is another
Hmm.
thing, right? Where people get together to actually discuss about the book without concern for spoilers.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So our third question is how can we add more fun into our self-care?
Hmm. And uh, I I say, maybe not surprisingly, gamification. Uh, uh, so I I think gamification is misapplied often, and I don't really want to go too far down that rabbit hole of
Sure.
criticizing others' practice, but I think I read a book, speaking of books, called Empathy Engines by Elizabeth Sampat, um, that talks about how games and things like game design can be used to build empathy and improve human relations. And she has one chapter about that's a critique of how gamification is implemented. So if it's cool with you, I'd like to read part of it.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Um, so leading up to this, she talks about a woman on at the time Twitter, um, who tweeted, "I want to start a project. Text or tip. If your taxi driver texts while driving, no tip. Doesn't text, big tip. Give a card explaining."
Hmm.
Um, and so she talks about how the author of that tweet isn't taking into account the reasons behind the behavior, right?
Mhm.
Um, then she generalizes and says gamification, which is what the tweet is suggesting, right? Turning this into a clear breakdown of incentives for behavior, right? I will incentivize this behavior by doing this with an incentive that I think is valuable to
Right.
you. Gamification happens when one person or company or team wants to change the behavior of another person or company or group. The problem with gamification, then, is that it often comes from the solipsistic approach of the text or tip project. It tries to solve the problems of the people who want the behavior changed, and not the problems of the people who are the target of the proposed system.
Hmm.
Gamification asks, what's bothering me? While corrective design, which is what she's advocating for, asks, what's bothering them? Games and gamification cannot change the world. Corrective design can, but implementing corrective design is often not within a game designer's power.
Mhm.
Because of this, anyone looking to actually build a better world through systems may find more satisfactory employment in urban planning or legislature than in the game industry. And so the idea there, which she expands a bit later, is that if we want to, um, she touches on this, I think, a little bit tangentially, but the most effective kind of gamification would be where the designer themselves identifies a problem that they are having
Yeah. Hmm.
and game designs that, right? My problem is I need to drink more water, right? And so the way that I will reward myself is I like to have a seltzer at night, but if I haven't had my 2 bottles of water, no seltzer, right? Um, or more accurately, once I have my 2 bottles of water, then I get the seltzer.
Hmm.
Um, but back to that idea of one size fits all really fits none, it has to be that internalized thing that wouldn't might not work for you, likely wouldn't work for most people, right? Um, if you're looking at the issue of drinking water, you might say, well, I will drink one of these bottles before lunch, and if I haven't had it by lunch, the first thing I do when I sit down to lunch will be to finish the bottle of water, right? And then
Sure.
I can eat my lunch. And then same thing for dinner. Great.
Yeah.
And that might work for you. Um, and so if I think if we do gamification right, I think those aren't great examples because that's not fun, really. Maybe the seltzer, depending on how much you like seltzer. Um, but like, the sort of punitive, I don't get to have lunch until I drink my water is a, a bit on the wrong end of the spectrum there. So for me, I sort of stumbled on something that that works for me. A friend of mine who does some game design had a podcast about game design for a while, interviewing game designers. Um, Came up with a system where he identified that at work there were 7 tasks he had to do almost every day that he hated doing.
Hmm.
And he would put them off and put them off and put them off. And then a couple days later, I have to, you know,
Yeah. I
now
have to do the 7 things times a couple days.
right, right. And it's all piled up and it's bigger and ugh. And he
Yeah.
said, and then I realized there are 7 pieces in Tetris. And so he created, where is it? He created a sheet that turns that into Tetris, right? So each piece is assigned a task, and as you do the tasks, you fill your board up,
Yeah.
right?
Awesome.
Um, and he set some other rules for himself, right? One of the things he said is that, uh, if I'm remembering correctly, this was about 2 years ago that I read all this. He sometimes would say he would find himself doing the same task because he'd already done it and the band-aid was off, and he could do that again and again and again and again. And so one rule he set for himself was that he couldn't earn anything for the task if he couldn't place it touching a piece that
Mm.
wasn't the same piece.
Ooh, interesting.
As you can see, I've totally done away with that for me for a couple reasons. Like one, that doesn't matter to me, right? Um, but also sometimes, there are at the end of a quarter, I have a lot of grading to do. And
Yeah.
so, I'll have some boards that are just like a row of I graded papers.
Hmm.
Or if we're doing, over the weekend, we did a lot of work around the house and I had a lot of home tasks complete.
Hmm.
And so I took what Jeff came up with and then modified it for myself to hack my particular motivational strategy in games. And it's fun, right? I added in the part he didn't have the coloring part to it, but I added that in because it's pretty to look at and there's, some joy in coming downstairs and like using my markers that my wife and daughter got for me for my birthday after I'd been doing this
Yeah.
for a few months. Um, and and so I modified that to work particularly well for me. If I did it exactly the way he did it, it wouldn't work. Um,
Which speaks to exactly what the book was saying.
right,
It's solving your problem, not a general thing that
right,
works for everyone.
right. If I handed this to my students and said, every time you read 10 pages, you get this. Every time you write a page of your essay, you get this. Every time you complete a homework assignment, you get this.
Hmm.
Maybe a couple of them would go, oh, that's pretty cool, great. But
Hmm.
most of them would probably not. Uh,
Right.
and then part of this too is a working up to a more tangible reward then, well, I've got that set of essays graded. Well, I've got those quizzes graded. Um, there is that tangible, and now I get, uh, you know, my little lightning bolt shape here for grading.
Right.
But also, once I complete 4 lines, I get to open up a pack of Star Wars Unlimited cards, right?
Mhm.
And I have, my packs lined up here looking at me. And later on today, I get to open one because I completed a row earlier today. Um, so,
I can hear the excitement in your
right,
voice, actually.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what works for me. And uh, Jeff had a different reward system, right? It was, um, I don't remember exactly what he used, but he used something even smaller than that. But when he filled up a column, he got a bigger reward. I did away with that. That doesn't, once I fill the row, I open the cards, I'm good, right?
Yeah, sure.
But to motivate myself to to focus on it, once I fill the whole sheet up, then I give myself a bit of an allowance for something else, right? Either to, buy another box to replace the packs that I've opened or to buy, I like that I have a vinyl box set down here that was $100 and it was like I'm not spending $100 on vinyl, right? I don't get
Right.
to sit and listen to my records enough. Um, that's a waste. Nope, I have a Tetris sheet filled up. Yep, I'm getting it. Magnolia Electric Company box set. Here we come.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and so that as a bank it for later kind of thing works particularly well for me. It
yeah.
might not work for other people, right? But I think the fun we put into self-care has to come from that authentic place of, yes, this for me is the self-care that I need,
Hmm.
right? The more tasks I have hanging over my head, the more stressed out I get. Um, and the having those small but meaningful to me rewards are key. Um, yeah, and so I think being clear about what is fun for me has mattered a lot.
Yeah, I love that as a curiosity that we can all hold.
Hmm.
What is fun for me?
Yeah.
What restores me, right? It goes back to that idea of all the different types of restoration
Yeah.
and bringing self-care and accomplishment and rest all into just this same place,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, I love that. I love like for me, like again, stillness is one of the biggest restorers. So I do that in different ways, and but my favorite is always just standing outside. And
Mm.
I can look at a tree or the clouds or a flower or just the all of it, but it's just standing and feeling the air and maybe the rain
Yeah.
or the sunshine, just being in it like fills my cup so fast.
Hmm.
Yeah. And lifts my spirit in that like
Yeah.
way that of just like fun, of
Yeah.
fun.
And I can see it on you, right?
Yeah.
Like even just thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that was the practice that you wanted to share with us too. Is there anything like is are there any additional tips that you would like to give to people in creating their own?
Yeah. I so for me, this is the process that worked for me, right? A friend said I started using this and it was good, and I started using it and said it's good, but for me,
Yeah.
right? It's good, but I don't care about pieces, the same piece touching each other. Fine, right? That doesn't, that's not a meaningful change, or that's not a meaningful problem that I have to solve for me.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, like you said about practice, right? The first month I did this, my motivation ended once I filled it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's a shame because I usually fill it up with about a week left in the month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and said, and had a week where I was just sort of like, well,
All my chores are done for the month.
might as well save the grading till next month when it can count. Um, Maybe I could do it now and make a little note that I can have that in the. Um, and so, I just ideated on it, right? Now I have an overflow sheet. So if I complete everything in a month, I start filling out, the overflow sheet of uh, stuff that I did that month that won't go on the October one. It will go on overflow number 13, right? Which I'm
Yes.
staring
Yeah.
at on my magnet board there. But it's just that gradual improvement of it until it's just like a really good hack of my brain and motivation and what I enjoy and how I find joy in doing stuff that isn't always joyful for me, right?
Yeah.
Um, and recently I've started thinking that, I feel like I might be approaching a point where this is no longer necessary,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's the goal for me of any kind of gamification where you motivate the behavior. And if you do it well enough, it becomes something where that motivation to complete it is partially internalized or internalized enough or fully internalized to the point where I don't need to do this. I have enough good associations with the satisfaction of completing that set of quizzes and saying no more, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's like, I mean, in that statement, I heard a lot of behavioral training
mhm,
confirmation, right? Like you're giving yourself training to the behavior that will support you
right.
in a way that feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my advice to everybody who wants to try something like this is start out with something that sounds good and then be reflective over it, right?
Mm.
What do you need to add? What seems like tedium that you can take away, right?
Mhm.
For Jeff, coloring would be tedium. For
Mhm.
me, I really like it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and as you modify the process, you'll make it more and more and more your own so that it'll be more and more authentic for you. It'll be the game that you want to play to bring about this change in your behavior that you want to bring about.
Yes.
And so being really clear about, as clear as you can be from the start, what behavior you want to change. I think in the first half year, my categories changed pretty significantly, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, at the start, I had clearing out my school email and clearing out my personal email as two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And that I said, well, that's too easy now, right? Um, and so pretty quickly, that just got merged into one. Um, or for a while, uh, I was focused on weight loss, right? And so any not the healthiest approach to things, but every time I got on the scale and my weight was lower than the day before, I got a shape.
Mm-hmm.
I had a separate one for exercising and working out. I got much closer to where I wanted to be, and in talking with other people and thinking about it, if I'm exercising, weight loss may stop happening,
That's right.
and I shouldn't feel like there's a penalty for that,
Right.
right? Um, and so I removed that and said, well, now it's just exercise. I don't get an attaboy for losing weight,
Right.
especially because I was finding I would lose weight on days when I didn't exercise.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so then it was, well, the easiest way to get something is. And so being really careful of what behavior, really and truly what behaviors you're incentivizing with this, right?
Yeah, I love that. Then it just becomes like an ongoing reflective tool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing about this
Oh,
practice with
my
us.
pleasure. I hope something like that helps everyone. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
been great for me. So
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna do a closing breath for us. It's been wonderful having you on. I'm so
well, so
grateful
good.
to
Thank you.
have you here. Um, so just one more time, we're gonna just settle in and bring your attention to following your breath as it moves in and out. And notice if anything is shifted in your system. Again, just simply noticing and following your breath. And then take one more breath. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. And we're a couple minutes over, so I'm just gonna go ahead and sign us off, okay? Um, I love me, I love you, I love us. I'll see you soon. Thank you.